My goal is always not to just save money, but to save money in the easiest ways possible. I don't want to save a ton of money, but be working on things all the time or be spending hours doing something that's going to save me a few bucks. I want to save money in the ways that are the most impactful and the easiest that let me go on with my life. And that is like hands down my number one goal when it comes to feeding my family on a budget. So in this video, I'm going to share with you 9 of my top ways to save money in the easiest ways possible. And the number 1 and number 2 are probably pretty obvious. However, the ways to go about saving money on food in these 2 ways can be a little less obvious, a little less like a duh. So the top 2 tips are to buy cheaper ingredients and to buy fewer things.
Wow.
Yeah, like I said, pretty obvious, right? But how do you go about doing these things? So I'm going to end the video with my top tips to buy cheaper ingredients. So we'll get to that one in a second. But yeah, number 1 is buy cheaper. Number 2 is buy fewer items. But how? The third tip goes with the second tip. To be able to buy fewer items, you need to inventory your kitchen. What do I mean by inventory your kitchen? I mean, you are going to make a physical list or a digital list, but you're going to truly make a list. It's not just going to be in your noggin, all right? You need to put this in writing somewhere. You're going to inventory all the things in your kitchen that could possibly go into a recipe or be a snack or be a breakfast, whatever. All the things you could consume, you could eat, your family could eat. So I don't just mean like, oh, I have some frozen chicken breast. No, I mean you have frozen chicken breast, you have breadcrumbs, you have a box of pasta. You have half the ingredients you need for chicken parmesan. Chicken parmesan needs to go into your meal plan. And sidebar, if you think you are anti-meal planning, my last video is about how you're wrong. That's not all that it's about. It's about how to save money on groceries in easy ways, like this video. But in that video, I talk about how if you think you don't meal plan, you do meal plan if you eat meals. You may have a meal plan where you fly by the seat of your pants and you don't plan, but you go to the grocery store super frequently or you find yourself in the drive-thru line more than you want. So that video is about how to make the meal plan easier, how to make it not so overwhelming. Anywho, so add things like chicken parm to your meal plan when you realize you have half the ingredients. But to do that, you gotta inventory your kitchen. So go through your freezer, your pantry, and your fridge and note everything that could be an ingredient in a recipe, like I said. So you have half a jar of pesto, you have some apple cider vinegar, you have some ketchup, mustard, hot dogs, anyone? Like, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but any recipe you can make where you have a couple of the ingredients already is going to save you big money. So then what do you do if you have some random ingredients that you know you should use up, that you know you should plan a recipe for and put that on your meal plan? What do you do if you're like, I don't know what to do with this? Or we tried a recipe once, we didn't really like it, or we had this ingredient because we make the same meal with it over and over and I'm kind of tired of it, so it's just sitting here in my pantry. That is tip number 4, where to find inspiration to use up these ingredients. So I will search by ingredient on Pinterest or Google, not so much Instagram, but you can find some good recipe inspiration on Instagram too. But say I have red wine vinegar in my pantry right now. And I've done this before actually for red wine vinegar. I don't even remember why I originally bought red wine vinegar, but I use it in a couple of different recipes now. I have a recipe for a Mediterranean pasta salad that uses red wine vinegar in the sauce, in the dressing, and then the viral like grinder salad sandwich, grinder subs, whatever, red wine vinegar is in that. And I don't remember which one of those I found first, or maybe I found them at the same time, but I went into Pinterest and was like, red wine vinegar recipes using red wine vinegar. Or sometimes I'll even search my own boards and pins I've already saved and realize that ingredient is in several recipes that I've already saved and clearly already want to try. But that is an easy way to find multiple ideas for an ingredient you already have in your house that you don't gotta buy. Another one I do that for a lot is Chipotles. You know, they come in that can. Maybe they come in a jar too, but they come in a can that's like this big, right? And you use 1 to 2 and a little bit of the sauce. Only using that a little bit at a time, and then you have this whole container of Chipotles. just chilling in your fridge, waiting to be forgotten. Don't forget about it. Use it in other recipes. If you have a particular ingredient that you're like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I got that like sitting in my fridge, been there for a few months, but it's still good, obviously. Don't use up things that are spoiled or bad or really old just because I'm telling you this. Moving forward, just try and avoid that happening, okay? You don't want those ingredients languishing in the back of your fridge where they could be saving you money by being used in other recipes, so you don't have to buy more ingredients. And then the next tip kind of goes along with that one also. So these all kind of tie together. There's a basic system for saving money on groceries, for making budget-friendly meal plans. So the next one is taking your calendar, taking your calendar into account when you are planning dinners. And this helps you avoid food waste. So if you don't look at your calendar and you plan to cook dinner at home 5 nights this week, and you've got like multiple things going on in the evening, you're probably not gonna make these homemade from scratch dinners this week. Maybe a couple of nights, but probably not all 5, and that's okay. One of my biggest like meal planning myth buster things is that meal planning has to mean homemade dinners, home cooked meals every night. If it's on your meal plan, it has to be a home cooked meal. Nay, it does not. If you put Chick-fil-A on your meal plan, that counts. If you put frozen pizza on your meal plan, that counts. Having a plan for dinner is what meal planning means. You can plan nights out. You can plan leftover nights. You can plan cereal for dinner nights. Whatever your family needs, you can do that. So anywho, about the calendar. Check your calendar when making your meal plans so that you plan for these busy nights, so that you aren't buying ingredients and letting them spoil. If you never get to a recipe, if you forget about it, if these ingredients again are just sitting in the back of your fridge not being used, you're wasting money. If you have things go bad, you're doubly wasting money. Like you can't do a kitchen inventory of a bag of salad that expired and is all slimy and gross. If you plan to have a side salad with frozen pizza one night and use that up, great. That totally counts and it saves you money. Because here's the thing, if you plan and shop for dinners and then you go to the drive-thru, you're literally paying for dinner twice. And your drive-thru meal is gonna be, probably twice as expensive as a homemade meal. So you're kind of paying for food 3 times, which obviously is the worst way to spend your money. So my 6th tip to easily save you money on groceries is by making it easy, by making your meals easy. Again, this is to avoid food waste. If you make a meal plan with really complicated dinners with too many homemade from scratch meals, you're not gonna cook them, like I said. So not only take into account your calendar, but take into account like your energy levels. Be realistic. I'm gonna link my most popular video ever here, which is one single tip, and it's to be realistic. That's how you save money. You save money on food, you save money on groceries by being realistic. So check out all the details of that there. But in short, don't make it too complicated if you are not like Rachel Ray. Don't try and be the pioneer woman. Don't try and be Rachel Ray if that ain't you. Or if your lifestyle right now, if the season of life you're in is just not fitting with that, don't try and force it. It's okay. Be realistic, okay? So don't make it too complicated. Put simple, easy dinners on your meal plan and you're actually gonna cook them and they cost less. Things with few ingredients cost less money. Duh. Dinners with fewer ingredients, simpler ingredients cost less money, even if they are what I call shortcut ingredients. So rather, this goes back to how I wanna save money and time at the same time, and well utilizing when I do splurge. Making my splurges count is what I'm trying to say. That was a weird sentence. But I make my splurges count by spending a little bit more on shortcut ingredients, the convenience ingredients, the made for you things that make the most impact. So like right now, we're going out of town next week, and the night before is gonna be a little chaotic, preparing to go to the airport in the morning with a 2-year-old. Gonna be a little chaotic. So we are going to have tortellini. That's the shortcut, one of the shortcut ingredients. We're gonna have tortellini with pesto and roasted broccoli. So roasted broccoli is frozen. It's already in my freezer. I've got it ready to go. That's another tip for not wasting food, is to buy frozen vegetables, which actually, no, that's not one of my cheaper ingredients. Okay, so technically it's not cheaper than fresh broccoli, but if you buy frozen broccoli and it doesn't go bad and you use it, you save money versus fresh broccoli that's spoiled, obviously. So anywho, that's ready to go. We've got frozen tortellini, we've got a jar of pesto, 2 convenience ingredients, but they make a big impact and they're cheaper than like a totally pre-made meal. You can literally buy pesto tortellini in a package and it's more expensive than buying tortellini and pesto yourself. And literally all you do is dump out the pesto on top of the tortellini. So take into account things like that also. But anywho, that's a simple meal that's really fast and saves me money. It's a lot cheaper than the drive-thru. It's a lot cheaper than a completely put together meal kit you can buy like in the deli section of the grocery store, right? So prioritizing those things, and like I said, spending on the most big impact convenience ingredients. Leave me a comment if you did not follow that and if you don't know what I'm saying there. But those convenience ingredients that are a little bit more expensive than the homemade ones, but not like a completely homemade meal when you're buying a few items to cobble together a really quick, easy throw together meal versus buying one of those meal kits is cheaper. Hope that makes sense. Now getting to how to buy cheaper ingredients entirely. So one way to buy cheaper ingredients is to plan meatless meals. We recently started trying to up the amount of meatless meals in our week for like a health thing and saving money thing over the summer. So I talked about in my last video. Actually, I said at the beginning of the video, my last video was related to saving money on food. It's not. My last video was about how I save money on flights, which you should totally watch if you're trying to travel for cheap. But before that is another saving money on groceries video. But anywho, yes, in that video, I'm talking about how we are taking 2 out-of-state trips in 1 month. In the month of August, we are going out of state twice for 2 different weddings that are both out of state, which is kind of crazy. So to be able to afford that, we had to cut back on a few things this summer, you know? So upping our meatless meals is good for your wallet and your waistline. Yeah, meatless is the #1 way to save because meat is more expensive than canned beans and things like that. If you want some ideas for meatless meals, drop me a comment and I'll send you some links for my favorite recipes. And like I said, simple meals are going to be less complicated. Yes, simple meals are obviously less complicated because they're simple. They're going to be cheaper also. So if you have, this is my meal planning formula: protein, veggie, starch, flavor equals meal, right? So your protein may be meat, and maybe beans, and maybe tofu, whatever you want. And then you're gonna add some veggies. You're gonna add a starch like rice, potato, noodles, whatever, rolls on the side, whatever you want, starch or grain. And then how you're gonna flavor that all up is gonna be, you can tell it's hot in Houston. Can y'all hear those cicadas? Goodness gracious. What was I saying? Yes, so a 1-pot meal, a complete meal, something like that. So for dinner tonight, we are having, what's it called? Unstuffed pepper casserole. So it has bell peppers, it has ground beef, it has rice, and the seasoning and flavors all in there. I don't have to think about it. What did we have last night? Last night we had teriyaki salmon with roasted green beans and rice. So the flavor is the teriyaki, the protein is the salmon, the veggie is green beans, the rice is the starch / grain. Don't come at me if I'm labeling these things wrong. Apparently I don't know anything about nutrition, so don't follow me for nutrition advice. Last tip for buying cheaper ingredients is a little bit less intuitive, I guess. To buy cheaper ingredients, you need to avoid the special ingredients. So that is things like sun-dried tomatoes. If you buy that for 1 recipe and you never use it again, going back to my tip about finding ways to use up what you have in your kitchen inventory in new ways, you don't want to buy special ingredients that are used for 1 recipe only. Maybe if that's like your favorite recipe of all time and you know you're going to cook it once a month or every other week, then sure, okay, you can splurge on that special ingredient. But for the most part, if a recipe calls for something special, unique ingredient that I know I'm not going to use in other recipes, if I find a recipe like that, I will do a quick Pinterest search to find other ways to use that ingredient before I go splurge on it. However, if I don't find anything, I am either going to skip that recipe entirely or I'm just going to leave out that ingredient. Like, you don't have to include every ingredient. Obviously, if it's like bacon wrapped shrimp, can't really skip either the bacon or the shrimp. That's a bad example because that's a protein, but I can't think of a better example. Like the sun-dried tomatoes, if that's the main ingredient in like a pasta sauce, you gotta use that, right? Or else you're just gonna have like Alfredo and that's a completely different recipe. But you get what I'm saying? When you buy these unique, higher priced items and you don't use them multiple ways, again, they're just sitting in your kitchen, not being used. They're a waste of money. You spent like $4 on a jar of sun-dried tomatoes and you used like 50 cents out of it. That's a waste. You see where I'm going with this? Use up what you already spent your money on first, and then you spend less money going forward. So if you can, skip these special unique ingredients or skip the recipe entirely. Okay, this was a short, to the point video, but yeah, that's 9 simple and easy ways that I cut my grocery budget, or rather, I don't really cut it because I've always followed these rules, but I keep it low. Back in the day, before the pandemonium that went through the world, I could do a month worth of groceries for just my husband and I, admittedly, but I could do a month of groceries for 150 bucks. $75 a person for a month. Gone are those days. way gone are those days, right? Unfortunately. But there are still ways to save money on groceries, to keep your grocery budget low and utilize what you've already spent your money on, is my main point of this entire video. So I hope you found it helpful. Let me do a real quick rundown of what those tips are again. So you're gonna buy cheaper ingredients by doing things like skipping the meat, skipping the special ingredients, focusing on simple dinners. You're gonna buy fewer ingredients by inventorying your kitchen. If you don't know how to use up an ingredient, you're gonna use the internet for inspiration, search for that ingredient. And to avoid food waste, to avoid buying ingredients you never use, you're gonna keep your meal plan simple, and you're gonna factor in your calendar before you go make a meal plan. You're gonna avoid planning too many meals and ending up in the drive-thru anyway. All right, so those are some really simple, easy things to implement. They aren't requiring you to make bread from scratch every night, to make everything from your kitchen from scratch, right? Like, that's my point. It doesn't have to be super complicated to save. All right, so in my next video, we are talking about, what are we talking about? What is my next video? One moment. Oh yes, in my next video, it's gonna be a good one. We are talking about how to never run out of dinner ideas, which I know is also a major thing that keeps people from cooking at home. You end up going out because you just are done with the dinner decision making, right? So definitely subscribe and turn on notifications to see that video soon.